What's up, guys? It's Ian here, back with the second edition of the question and answer video series. First of all, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, leave me a question down below in the comment section, and I'll be sure to answer your question in the next edition of this question and answer video series. Alright, thank you again for coming and watching, and let's get started. Topic 1. This is some clarification on female body fat percentages to look lean from last Q&A. My first question asker was male, so I just wanted to add some info regarding females because I addressed the question from his perspective last week. And in case this is the first video that you're watching of mine, you didn't see last week's video. Last week's video was kind of long. I'm going to try to make this more concise. So let's go. Here's some charts. I'm going to just read them off and I'll list them down in the comment section below. These are body fat percentages for men and women respectively. So for biological men, essential fat range is 2 to 5%. For athletes, it's 6 to 13%. For fitness levels, general fitness is 14 to 17%. The acceptable range is 18 to 24%, and obese is above 25%. For women, the essential fat range is listed as 10 to 13%. For athletes, it's listed at 14 to 20%. For general fitness, it's listed from 21 to 24%. The acceptable range is 25 to 31%, and the obese range is anything above 32% for biological women. Alright, so these are general ranges. I wanted to touch on appendicular sarcopenia and centric adiposity and touch on how these relate. So I like to use waist to hip ratio as a useful predictor of disease in absence of body fat percentage data. Waist to hip ratio is a very useful predictor of disease risk. I like to keep it consistent and measure it by measuring one measurement around the belly button, the other measurement around the largest part of the butt. You can find this by turning to the side in a mirror and finding the largest part of your butt. Enter that ratio into Google, and that'll allow you to find a waist to hip ratio number for yourself. Appendicular sarcopenia refers to a lack of muscle mass on the appendages, so having small arms or legs. And centric adiposity refers to having a large amount of body fat around the midsection. As we know, body fat is an endocrine gland. It has an effect on the organ systems that it surrounds, so an excess of body fat is thought to contribute to increased disease risk. So it's important to not treat all of these body fat percentages as set in stone. Two individuals of the same body fat percentage can have different disease risk depending on how that body fat is distributed throughout the body. So keep that in mind when assessing body fat percentage. And I like to use body fat percentage or BMI or weight over time in conjunction with waist to hip ratio in order to get a better picture of overall health and disease risk. Drop me a question in the comments if you want any clarification regarding any of those topics there. Moving on, topic 2. I had a question asker from last week ask me how to progress to a handstand push-up. They said that they've tried to do it with their feet against a wall, and they're a little bit too weak to get any reps. So when programming for the handstand push-up, I'd first like to ask, do you want to do a freestanding handstand push-up or assisted with your feet on the wall or somebody holding your legs still? So the freestanding handstand push-up, it's going to require a lot more proprioception and stability of the smaller muscles in the hand and wrist. The assisted handstand push-up is going to require less proprioception, going to be more a strength-based movement. So for the assisted handstand push-up, I would just recommend overhead pressing, whether it's with a barbell or dumbbells. That's going to help get you closer to that handstand push-up. So as an aside, I actually can't do a handstand, but if I have somebody holding my ankles or feet on a wall, I can do a fair number of handstand push-ups. So there is a delineation between them, and the freestanding one is significantly harder because you're limited by whether or not you can do a handstand. I would say that if you're not able to access weights in order to do overhead pressing or dumbbell pressing, something like just push-ups, tricep pushdowns, really strengthening the front delt, the tricep, and then the upper chest. Those are going to be the prime movers in the handstand push-up. They should get you a lot closer to doing that movement. Just generally strengthening those muscle groups will help over time. Drop a question below in the comments if you want any more clarification on that topic, and I'll try and clear up any extra questions you might have in the next edition of this video. Moving on to topic number 3. So one of my personal friends is doing a cookie cutter template program, and they want to ask me if they can add extra accessory work on one of their non-lifting days. So I'm assuming that they didn't get a chance to watch my video from last week, so let's just pretend that they didn't see last week's video where I talked about volume, and I'm going to address this outright. Alright, so adding extra accessory work onto a cookie cutter program. Is this good or bad? First, when I'm doing my intake questionnaires for clients, I like to ask, how is your recovery? How is your sleep and nutrition? Are you somewhere around calorie maintenance or in a slight surplus? If either of those is the case, your recovery is going to be slightly better. Are you sleeping adequately? Can you even maybe take a midday nap? If you want to be a high-level athlete, you want to really dial in all of your recovery. I did talk a lot about it in last week's video, but we're going to assume that they didn't see that. So sleeping in a dark, quiet room, that's going to be key in terms of high quality sleep. Sleep enough. Sleep needs for the individual vary, and based on training volume, lifestyle stress, and external work, you're going to need different amounts of sleep from person to person. A lot of professional athletes are known to sleep over 10 hours a day just because their training and game time, everything put together is so stressful that they need that extra sleep. So if you're an individual working a regular full-time job and training and maybe competing in some type of martial art or other sport, you're going to need extra sleep. So make sure you curb your extracurricular activities in order to get yourself a level of sleep that you feel facilitates adequate recovery. Try to be really general there because everybody needs different amounts of sleep. Some people feel great off 6.5 hours, some people need 8, some people need 10 or 12. So there is a lot of individual variance there. Now let's talk about adding the accessory work in. So my friend here wants to add extra accessory work to his cookie cutter template program. Most template programs out there have a similar amount of volume throughout each training cycle, and the main variable that they manipulate is training intensity, or the amount of external load typically applied to the lifter. Alright, so this doesn't really account for individual volume tolerances. Some individuals respond better to high intensity, high amounts of external load with lower volume, and some individuals can tolerate mass amounts of volume, but they can't tolerate higher ends of the training intensity spectrum very well. Some individuals get more burnt out, or they start to notice more overuse injuries crop up when their intensity is too high. Some individuals don't fare as well with high volume. So you really have to ask yourself, what kind of trainee are you? What do you respond to? What do you respond well to and badly to? These are all important questions to ask yourself when modifying a training program. So in order to modify your cookie cutter template over time without just making yourself a custom program, I'd say go ahead and add 1 or 2 sets per muscle group per week worth of accessory exercises for the muscle groups that you're trying to bring up. A lot of people ask about accessory work when they notice a muscle group that's weaker in relation to the other ones or deficient that makes them less well-rounded. People have somewhat of a genetic predisposition to have stronger and weaker body parts, but as your training age increases and you train for more and more years, you should notice these things even out more and more. And you can tailor your training plan, assign volume to your weaker muscle groups in order to bring them up more in line with your stronger muscle groups and develop more of a symmetrical, well-rounded physique. Alright, so add 1 or 2 sets per muscle group per week and see how you recover. You want to have some type of baseline fitness assessment. I'd say monitor the rate of perceived exertion on each of your top sets each training week, and that'll allow you to get a good indicator of, is your accessory work hindering your recovery, or are you tolerating it well? And you can titrate that up over time as you train more and as you rest better and are eating close to maintenance or slightly above maintenance calories, very slightly. You don't want to get you too fat, you can get a little fatter in an attempt to increase your performance. But as you dial in all those things, your ability to tolerate increased training volume should increase as well. Hopefully that answered your question about adding accessory work to a cookie cutter plan. If you have any other questions regarding that and you want more clarification, drop me another question in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to answer that in the next segment of my question and answer video. Thank you again for coming and watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, drop me those questions in the comments below, DM me on Instagram. Thank you. Have a great week.